Hi, I'm Maximilian Büsser, founder of MB&F. To me, watchmaking is art with a capital A. Watchmaking is about creating kinetic sculptures. Watchmaking is more importantly a mindset, and it's a journey. Just think of this. Someone around 1270 thought that he could transform steel and brass into a contraption giving time. Someone else, named John Harrison, a humble carpenter in the early 18th century, thought that by improving on existing clockmaking, it would be possible to measure longitude. And he did. A self-taught watchmaker who over 45 years created 4 clocks, each a revolution, and many of his ideas are still used today. The history of watchmaking is filled with adventurers. Dreamers, engineers, artists who will each in their own way contribute to a better world. The watchmaking journey is first and foremost about very special individuals. Some are rebels and mavericks, and most have a little touch of madness. Now, over the years, we have come to realize that many MB&F owners are adventurers themselves. Our collectors circle called The Tribe is full of such individuals. Many have amazing lives and stories to tell, and this is why I decided to start this podcast. Today, I welcome someone who is definitely one of them. He was until recently a managing partner at Kleiner Perkins, one of the world's most important venture capital firms based in Silicon Valley. He's an entrepreneurial genius, and he just started his own VC firm, Matter Venture Partners. Welcome to this new episode of Tales from the Tribe. Wen Hsieh, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. I'm incredibly honored to start this podcast series with you, Wen.
Wow, Max, that's a real punchy intro. I think you can give Richard Attenborough a run for his money in the watch industry. Very impressive.
I have to say, meeting you has been one of the high points of my last couple of years. You're so generous in sharing knowledge and at the same time so humble that our discussions have been incredibly enlightening. Let's dive in. We talked about madness. Do you have a little touch of madness in you? And if yes, is it important sometimes to let that madness guide you?
I must admit, I do have a bit of touch of madness. And for me, this trait expresses itself sort of as a persistent need to ask questions like, why is it done this way? Why can't it be done better? What's the limit of what can be done? And oftentimes, I'm a bit impatient too. So I ask, why can't we do it better right now? And I think that's been a guiding principle for myself in the career I've embarked on and the person who I am. And I suspect you probably exhibit significant amounts of this trait or flaw, however you want to look at it.
For me, it's totally an incredible advantage in my life. It's not always been that way. As a kid, I was very much the weird one. But we'll come to childhood afterwards. So, sorry if I'm being a little bit nosy. What's the craziest thing you've ever done?
I guess the craziest thing I've ever done is not knowing that it was crazy then. But if you know a little bit about me, I actually spent my youth, this is sort of when I was 5 or 6, in the middle of the Amazon jungle. I have recollections of going into the forest with the native Indian kids, going to hunt for animals. And when I say hunt for animals, that's like birds and small cats and sometimes even small alligators. And in retrospect, maybe at that time, I wasn't the predator. Maybe I could have been the prey. It never crossed my mind then that was a crazy thing to do. But in retrospect, I think having a few young kids go in deep in the forest hunting may not have been the most wise thing at that time.
And looking back, that's a pretty uncommon childhood. Were you a lonely child? Were you surrounded?
I have a brother, but he's 5 years younger than me. So the beginning parts of my life were spent more alone. And so I think being lonely or being more alone tends to, fuel imagination because when you're alone, you have to come up and create things in your own head if you don't have many people around you. And being in the jungle, yeah, it could, it's not like there was a burgeoning community of other children that I could hang around. It was sort of my parents, the native Indian kids, and a lot of forest.
And today, do you think that's influenced your personality or your creativity?
I think so. I think some of my most constructive periods are when I'm actually alone. Believe it or not, I get a lot of inspirations in the bathroom, whether I'm brushing my teeth or sitting on the throne or taking a shower. I'd say probably a third or maybe even half of my good ideas comes from that solitary moment. So I'm not sure it ties back to the jungle. I think you'd have to do more of a Freudian analysis there. But yeah, solitary times has resulted in a lot of my creative streaks.
So you work for Kleiner Perkins, and you worked under John Doerr, who was your mentor, the partner who actually invested in Google and a few other companies back then. I remember you telling me a few of those Google stories. Can you tell us how Kleiner Perkins invested in Google and when that was?
Sure. And by the way, for the record, I wasn't physically there when Kleiner Perkins invested in Google. So most of my stuff is hearsay, but I think I've had some pretty accurate sources of information. So the history is that in June of 1999, Google raised $25 million in a Series A financing. And this is the first time that Google went out to institutional investors for a fundraise. And what's more amazing is that this $25 million financing was the only real money that Google raised before it went public on August 19th, 2004. And when it went public, it was valued at more than $23 billion. So from the time that Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia invested over the next 5 years, it made more than 280 times its initial investment. So I would say that in the history of venture investing, that was a pretty good initial return. And as you correctly pointed out, John Doerr was the KP partner who invested in Google at that time.
And the business plan was, how was that business plan? I think you've seen it. Is that a business plan you would invest in today if you looked at it?
Based on what I saw from their Series A investor pitch, Google initially was to make money by charging other websites a certain amount of money per 1,000 search clicks. And the internet was explosive at that point, and things were booming. But it wasn't obvious that Google would become the cash machine that it is today because it had combined search with advertising. So I'd say at that time, my enthusiasm probably would not be as high. But John, my mentor, John Doerr, once told me that it was very clear that there was a need to catalog and organize the vast amounts of information created on the internet. And this needed to be done in a way that was useful and meaningful. And Google seemed to have the right search engine at that time to best prioritize what internet surfers were looking for. It had the best algorithm and best methodology. And not just that, early versions of Google search engine brought the Stanford network to its knees, even when it allowed people to pilot it. And so combining those two characteristics, but that's what my understanding of the reason why Kleiner invested in Google.
So Kleiner Perkins is one of the greatest VCs. What really makes the company different from its competitors?
One of the key things that I think makes Kleiner Perkins stand apart is that KP, or we call Kleiner Perkins KP, epitomizes venture capitalists who roll up their sleeves to help build startups alongside their company founders. And KP has been doing this for 51 years now. It was founded in 1972, and in 2023, this is their 51st year anniversary. And I'd say that Kleiner Perkins is the venture firm that pioneered value-add venture investing. This is where one provides more than money, but leverages the venture capitalist network, know-how, scar tissue, and personal enthusiasm to help entrepreneurs build and create new companies.
I think you were telling me that you were really looking into companies where you knew you could help them scale at multiples. It was not only about success, it was really about scaling. Is that still the case?
It is the case. One of the key tenets of Kleiner Perkins is that we like to say it's important to make money since we're VCs, but it's even more important if you can make meaning while making money.
You were incredibly successful at Kleiner Perkins, and now you're leaving. And you've created your new VC fund called Matter Venture Partners, which is going to be, if I'm not wrong, focused on robotics, on AI. Could you tell us a little bit more about that story? That's pretty amazing.
As you know, I've been at Kleiner for 17 years as of this past February. And I realized that I wanted to do something different and maybe to double down on things that I believe in. And those are two things that are important to me, which is hardtech investing, as well as creating things that help change the world, particularly the way we live and the quality of our lives. The main goal of Matter Venture Partners, some people call us MVP, is we want to be the key technology tool enabler and provider for all major tech trends. We love to take part in creating the next generation of robots that eliminate the need for human beings to do, highly menial, physical, taxing, or even harmful jobs, right? I'm a firm believer that God created human beings so that we can do so much more than moving boxes on and off a truck, let's say for hundreds of times a day for hours on end, and to do it in a way that's hurtful or abusive to the human body, right? So it's these type of underlying technologies that we would like to help grow and flourish and to find the right entrepreneurs to lead these companies. That is the key mission of Matter Venture Partners, or MVP.
I find it great because what I hear here, it's you're trying to help people have a better life. That gives the purpose. So can we just come a little bit on to touch on AI, because it's the talk of the town or the world, and it's scary. So should we be afraid of AI? Are you going to be replaced by AI? Am I going to be replaced by AI? Can you give us a little bit of reassuring news maybe?
That's a loaded question. I'm not sure I'm the best person to reassure the world, but I can provide you my personal points of view. So I think your first question is, should we be afraid of AI? My answer to that is, I don't think we should be afraid of AI in any way that it threatens our existence or safety. We're not close to a Terminator moment at this point with regards to AI. That said, I do think that people should watch out for how AI may make them obsolete or less important in their current jobs or tasks. I think while we tout the benefits of AI, there are some real repercussions to what type of jobs that may replace or how it may shift the value add of our workforce. So if I was a young person coming into the workforce, I would really study AI to figure out how I can get AI to work for me instead of risk displacing me. So I think that's my answer to should we be afraid of AI? Your second question is, can I, Wen Hsieh, be replaced by AI anytime soon? I think the answer is yes and no. I think certain aspects of my capabilities, for example, my ability to read a lot of stuff and summarize it into a concise summary or so what, I do think that can be replaced by AI. I think ChatGPT can read, review, summarize things much better than you or I or any other human being could, okay? That said, to replace sort of this non-black and white judgment calls, reads on people, technology insight, scar tissues from my past failures, my gut feel, and particularly my leap of faith required to make good investment decisions as a venture capitalist, I think AI is a little bit farther away to be able to replace that type of characteristic of myself and of human beings. So, and not in that respect. So I guess the answer of replacing things I can do is, I would say it's a yes and no. And lastly, you asked, can you, Max Büsser, be replaced by AI one day? And I think for sure not. I'll just be honest with you. AI and F doesn't sound nearly as nice as MB&F.
Well, I've still got a few years in me. It was interesting. The other day, I was interviewed and somebody asked me, what's your role in the company? And spontaneously, I came up with the fact of saying I have to have very dumb or very risky ideas which can actually put the company in jeopardy. That's part of my job. And I don't think AI will ever come up with that, but maybe I'm wrong.
I have a question, Max, on that note, if I may. How many of your inventions around design are more spontaneous and sort of out of the blue versus drawing from a lineage or a continuity of something in the past? I'm curious to hear your answer to that.
So I'm a little bit schizophrenic over the years, meaning the horological machines are very much free thinking. I'm in a bus in Tokyo, completely jet lagged, and suddenly I think of a watch which looks like a bulldog, or I'm at the sea with my wife who gets stung by jellyfish, and I think, oh, instead of helping her out, I'm thinking, why don't I create a watch which looks like a jellyfish? Legacy machines are very much more intellectual, analyzing, loving what was done 100, 200 years ago and thinking, what could I do or what could we do which would make our ancestors proud? I'm not interested in doing all the time the same thing. Iterations bore me, and I feel a little dead inside when I do that. So I need to take risks. I need to get out of my comfort zone. I would be super scary for an investor. It's a good thing I have no investors in the company because, and I don't want any, because the way I talk, I think everybody would be running away. Have you seen that sort of thinking in people you've invested in?
I have. Most of our entrepreneurs have a good streak of sort of the disruptive thinking. The challenge in being a disruptor and thinker versus creating a scale business is trying to find a balance between the extreme disruption and the breakout and making that a reality at scale. And a lot of times, certain entrepreneurs, their creativity and imagination far exceeds what we can do as human beings to implement their ambitions and their technical aspirations. And we have to rein it back a bit so that we can build, a gazillion of the products that they dream up, so that we can share it with most of the people on Earth and those who deserve to use such a technology. So in business, unfortunately, it's a lot more balanced in our approach between revolutionary and evolutionary. But it's the revolutionary that really sparks a lot of times the real breakout technologies and applications that we see.
And it's a question people are starting to ask me, which means that my beard is now really white or gray. What would you tell your younger self? I mean, you've been incredibly successful, but is there something you would tell your younger self?
Oh, I would tell my younger self to maybe find more work-life balance. I think the older I get, I have realized that maybe sometimes I've put my personal interest and goals maybe second to my career or technical aspirations. And I think, the proverbial, maybe sometimes you need to take a deep breath and slow down and smell the roses or smell the flowers, I think is something I would probably give myself as advice. I think there's many of the life experiences of the past that I wish I slowed down to enjoy instead of just letting them go past me. And I guess the most targeted or the most poignant example would be, my mother passed away when she's relatively young of brain cancer at early 60s. I wish I spent more time with her, or actually maybe more quality time with her in the past. And that's just one example. No matter how successful I am now or what I've accomplished or what I will do, I don't get that back. And that's from my heart. That's one of the things I wish I told my younger self.
I think I've got a few of the same advice to give myself. Is that something you would tell the youngsters who work with you today?
I would, after they accomplish the task that I give them. But yeah, I think if you got me over a nice whiskey, and I would tell them that. In fact, I would tell my own children that. I think it goes back to the earlier point about balance. I think people like us, yourself, myself, your team, the really hard go-getters who really drive for change, it's not easy to achieve balance. I see it in my entrepreneurs quite often. It's not 100%. They work at 150%. And when you're at 150%, maybe it's harder to strive for balance at that point. But again, it's very important to try to do that.
I was very lucky that I think it's the day or the moment I had my first daughter who just been born in my arms. That was a tipping point for me. I was the absolute workaholic, working 16, 18 hours a day. And I also wanted to show the example to everybody working with me. It's like, well, don't worry, I'll always do more. And that changed, I think, when little Mila came into my arms. It's interesting because when I started MB&F, it was all about creating great products. And it's difficult for me to see people who whine or are victims. And I'm like, just get on with it, do it, find solutions. And I just pushed. And you realize many years down the road that actually it's the journey which you will remember. People will see the products, people will remember the products, but we as creators, what are we going to remember? Not the products. We're going to have the memories.
But Max, let me ask you this. Do you think that the younger Max and the younger Wen would have listened to the advice we'd give ourselves when we were younger?
Definitely not. I don't know for you.
I agree.
Okay, now what brought us together is that you own one of our pieces. A horological machine number 9, SV. It's quite a dramatic piece, and it was your first entry into our brand. Can you just share a few minutes of what happened when you saw that piece, and why did you get that?
I first saw the piece, I think, on YouTube. And my background has now allowed me to be steeped pretty deep in material science, particularly things like sapphire and silicon and glass. And so when I saw that piece, I was amazed that it could be done. I've seen sapphire, being a watch lover for a while, I've seen sapphire be used as sort of the cover glass of watches. And that's a pretty simple dome-shaped or circular sphere-shaped object made of sapphire. But when I saw the horological machine 9 SV, I couldn't believe that anyone could shape sapphire in a very non-standard, non-conformal, odd shape. And at first I actually thought, no, this must be glass. There must be bullshitting me. It can't be real. So I started looking into it, and I found that it was true. And it wasn't just the sapphire alone, but the ability to seal it, right? To make it waterproof, the ability to make it optically transparent without strange patterns that occur on the surface when your sapphire is not smooth or it's not well polished or it has weird refractive byproducts. When I saw that you guys had pulled this off, I was in disbelief, and I felt I had to have this, if not just as a reminder to me about what's possible. And that was my entry point. And a lot of people said the other Max who sold it to me, Max Soda, he's like, dude, you're going off the deep end of the pool. And I told him I didn't think this pool existed, deep end or not. So I had to jump right in. And so I'm still in awe today of that watch. And it is the most favorite in my collection. It looks amazing. The way it tells time is very elegant. The double balance wheel and all the mechanics are awesome. But what attracted me to the watch was your ability, and I would say probably perseverance and a bit of this madness to try to shape a sapphire block into such an organic and amazing shape. That's why I'm a big fan of MB&F, and that's why I'm a proud owner of that product.
Thank you, Wen, because it's true that not many people realize how insanely complex it is to transform our ideas into reality. Most of them will go, I like it, I don't like it, which is fair enough. But you need somebody like you who's in the engineering world who can say, but how the hell did they manage to pull that one off? So you discovered the brand through a product, and then you went into the brand, because usually we have people discovering the brand and the ethos, and then they go into the product.
Yes. And so I discovered the brand through the product, but then I discovered the brand through having met you. That was when I felt that the brand had, not just the product, had tremendous affinity to the things I believe in and the way I look at innovation and horology and even basic principles to life. And so that's why I'm not just a proud watch owner, I'm actually a proud tribe member and a big MB&F team and Max aficionado.
This is so kind of you. When we're talking about watches, and let's talk a little bit about time. People who are as successful and who work as much as you, what is your rapport to time? Is it a friend or is it a foe?
I think it used to be a friend, but I turned 50 years old in February of this year, as I mentioned earlier on. And I used to think that 50-year-olds were really old. But now that I'm 50, I don't feel that old anymore. I don't think it's a foe. I would say that it's become a lot more valuable than I used to think it was, time. I actually feel it's a luxury that I've fortunately have earned, that I can hopefully spend the next 20, 25 years of my life focus more on things that are important to me, things that I enjoy, hanging out with people that I like. So in that sense, time has gotten a lot more precious than it used to be. They say that at some point in life, you start counting backwards, not forward. I don't think I've reached that point yet, but I at least want to make sure when I start counting backwards, not forward, I've done most of the things that I would like to have achieved. If not, maybe not most, but a decent amount more than I have now.
Wen, thank you so much. I know it's a first for you. It's a first for me. We're trying out this concept. You've been absolutely great. And I'm looking forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks very much, and all the best with MVP in the meantime.
Thank you for allowing me to be the inaugural podcast partner to you. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed our conversation with Wen Hsieh and that you had a glimpse at his fascinating journey. We'll soon be back for a conversation with another of our tribe members. If you enjoyed today's episode, remember to subscribe to our podcast so as not to miss our next conversations. Stay curious, keep exploring, and cherish your madness.